and found all the debris. So then he thought it was military had blown up a drone or something. So,
Right.
You know, flying exercises, you know, and blasted down. It's been the size of a blimp because they did suck. Because we had the big base here. You know, the second longest runways in the world are here. It used to be the Roswell Army Airfield. So that's what he thought. It was military. So he went up to he didn't have phones. So he went up to the pay phone at the bar up here in Corona to call the brothers to ask them what to do. And they said, well, call up the military to come out there and clean it all up, you know, so on and so forth.
Right.
So he went down there, waited a day or two because he had things to do. But he didn't. Then he put some of the pieces, you know, into the pickup, and drove into Roswell because in those days you don't waste gas in 1947. It's hard to come by. So.
Right.
So he drove into town, went over because he had things to do. He had to drop off a load of wool over at the Roswell Wool, which is still here, you know, the Roswell Wool Exchange.
Yeah.
And then he went over. Then he went over to the Roswell Seed and Feed, which is in the next block, to load up feed. And then while they were doing that, he walked over to the sheriff's office, which was up here by the courthouse then, see Wilcox, to tell him about the stuff. Because the protocol in those days was you didn't talk to the base directly. If you had any problems, you called the sheriff, county sheriff, and the sheriff knew to call Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer of the base. So that's who that is. All reports, you know, to deal with the ranchers. Civilians, you know, you always had a battle with the ranchers and the Air Corps. So that's when he called him up, and he was having lunch and everything else. And by the time he got up there and went to the office to see him, showed him the stuff, and said, "Let's go." So that's when they all went up the next day on the 7th, because this happened on the 4th, see. And then the 7th is when they all went up, but it was too dark to get out there, so they spent the night in a shack they had there, a little ranch shack. And then the next morning they went out there, went all through all the debris and everything else, and then piled a bunch of it in their truck, because they brought a carry-all, his Buick, and they had Brazel's pickup truck. So he loads that up and then drives back into town, and that's when he went by his wife's house and to pick up some clothes and stuff and see the son and show him the stuff he found on the floor, you know.
Yeah.
Said, "Look at all this stuff. I got to pack it up, and you may never see it again," you know. So then he went into the base, and then when they got alert on all that stuff, that's when they put the alerts out and all that stuff, and that's when they put the headline that they'd captured the flying saucers. So,
Yeah.
you see, they didn't say anything about aliens because there weren't any bodies or aliens or anything on this side. That was just debris. See, the so-called solid craft, they got up in the air with bird dogs.
They didn't know what it was, though.
No, they didn't know what it was.
Could have been anything. Governmental plane or anything.
That's right. So they flew around because the trajectory, they knew it was just, they didn't have everything. And then by air is when they spotted the solid objects over here, and that's when they closed down the whole area and then went in and got it. See, that's when it gets mysterious. And that's when, once that happened, that's when the next page, they debunked it. Washington says, tell everybody it's a weather balloon or something.
Or something.
Yeah, that was a stupid mistake because everybody knew what weather balloons were here. We had hundreds of them. All the ranchers brought them in all the time. So they needed something a little more unusual. They should have said it was an experimental blimp or something. Then it wouldn't have been such a joke. Then somebody would have thought, oh, okay, well, it's top secret. We'll leave it all alone, you know, or
You
something.
should do a shirt that says "What comes around goes around." Like show about something,
I know.
a government cover-up,
I
and then
know.
today a government cover-up.
I know.
And say what goes around comes around.
Yeah. See, in those days, they trusted the government because the war was just over.
Sure, well, of course.
And all the ranchers were ex-GIs, most of them anyway. And so when the brass would come in and say, okay, don't tell anybody this and this, raise your right hand, your left hand, everything else, that's what they did then. They all kept exactly what the government said. See, today it's just the opposite. You can't trust any of them. Because they learned through the years how they just hide up everything, and no matter
People
what it
believe
is, and for national
Now
security.
the media is so biased.
Yeah. So that's what the deal is on the spots. Now we've got dirt from the guys, Adam Ruff and the Rare Earth Company. They get dirt from all over the country. We've got dirt from this site and that site. We don't have this site. He's still getting his papers permission to get dirt off the Ragsdale site because it's a park.
Yeah.
But that's what's in these bottles over here. This is the debris field off of that.
Very
And
interesting.
the orange one is from the corn.